As the supervisor, there will be no comments, no distractions, just me addressing you all to explain what's happening. Let's get right into it. In our CBA, which stands for Collective Bargaining Agreement, that's our union contract, it comes with the seat I hold. People aren't acknowledging that I didn't make this up. It wasn't just something I created. Tiffany Henyard, once seen as an unstoppable force in Dolton's political landscape, now finds herself at the center of a growing investigation that is sending shockwaves through her inner circle and beyond. Her name has been all over the headlines, but not for the reasons she had hoped. Allegations of corruption, financial misconduct, and abuse of power are starting to pile up, and the scrutiny over her dubious activities grows every day. The very people who once stood by her side, including her own partner, are now turning against her faster than anyone could have predicted. According to sources, even her baby daddy is cooperating with authorities, offering details that could have devastating consequences for Tiffany's future. The federal government is reportedly conducting an in-depth probe into her affairs, and those she once trusted to shield her are now working with law enforcement in their pursuit of justice. To understand how Tiffany's world came crashing down, it's essential to examine the path she took to power. Her journey was marked not only by ambition, but by a carefully crafted image of invulnerability. Throughout her time in office, Tiffany surrounded herself with loyal allies, individuals whose devotion seemed unwavering. Yet many of these figures had their own questionable reputations, creating an intricate web of enablers and scapegoats. She had strategically built a network of fall guys, people she believed would take the blame if any illicit activities were exposed. But as the investigation into her shady dealings picked up steam, Tiffany found herself unable to escape the mounting pressure. Once capable of manipulating public perception and dodging accountability, Tiffany attempted to retreat from media scrutiny, hoping the storm would pass and the controversy would die down. However, the FBI was allegedly closing in, making it increasingly difficult for her to remain in the shadows. The moment she tried to disappear, it became clear her power was beginning to erode. Those she relied on were no longer willing to protect her from the consequences of her actions. One by one, her supposed protectors began flipping, and the walls she had built around herself started to crumble. The most shocking betrayal came from her own partner, Kamal Woods. Kamal, Tiffany's longtime boyfriend, wasn't just romantically linked to her. He was deeply entangled in her business operations, making his involvement a critical aspect of the investigation. While he had been portrayed as a loyal companion, his willingness to cooperate with authorities suggests his role in Tiffany's alleged schemes was far more complex than anyone initially believed. Kamal wasn't just a passive figure in Tiffany's world. He was a significant player, having been named the director of her cancer foundation. That move had already raised suspicions. The foundation, which was ostensibly created to support breast cancer patients, is now under intense scrutiny. Investigators are questioning whether it was truly a charitable organization or just a publicity stunt. On the very day the foundation was officially launched, it received a sizable donation, further fueling speculation about its true purpose. As authorities dug deeper into its financial records, many began to suspect that the foundation was being used as a front for other, less charitable endeavors. This revelation, combined with the unraveling of Tiffany's support system, left her in a precarious position with nowhere left to hide. Once viewed as untouchable, Tiffany now faces the harsh reality that her political empire may be on the verge of total collapse. With federal authorities closing in, her once loyal allies turning against her, and the public demanding answers, the question remains, how much longer can she evade the consequences of her actions? The investigation has also brought to light serious concerns about her misuse of public funds. Reports indicate that she used taxpayer money to finance a trip outside of Dolton to promote her foundation, an action that effectively turned public funds into a tool for advancing her personal agenda. Worse still, she allegedly used taxpayer dollars to pay her employees, including Kamal Woods, who played a significant role in her questionable dealings. Despite the growing number of red flags, Tiffany continued funneling public money into her foundation, operating under the assumption that she was untouchable. But when federal authorities stepped in, things began to take a dramatic turn. The Kausi Feds arrived with subpoenas demanding access to crucial documents related to her financial transactions. Kamal, who had been receiving a paycheck from Tiffany's dubious foundation, was exposed for securing a lucrative position in Thornton Township, earning a salary of over $100,000, an amount most Dolton residents could only dream of. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Kamal's name appeared in the subpoenas, signaling that authorities were expanding their probe beyond Tiffany and into the financial activities of those in her inner circle. Tiffany herself was hit with 2 subpoenas, one of which delved into her private business dealings. Investigators uncovered an intricate web of enterprises that were as murky as her political affairs. Among these businesses were a restaurant and a property management firm, both of which raised serious concerns about their legitimacy. One particularly egregious case involved a tenant who lost their home in 2019 due to hazardous living conditions, including a mold-infested and leaking building, clear evidence that Tiffany's business practices were far from ethical. As the investigation continued to dig deeper into Tiffany's affairs, it became increasingly clear that her empire had been built on a foundation of deceit and financial manipulation. What makes this downfall even more dramatic is that the very people she had trusted to protect her interests are now assisting law enforcement in their pursuit of justice. Tiffany's long-standing pattern of cutting corners, abusing power, and prioritizing personal wealth over the well-being of the community is catching up with her in ways she never anticipated. She may have once believed she was invincible, but the mounting evidence against her suggests otherwise. With federal investigators closing in, her days of unchecked authority are numbered. The most stunning betrayal of all came from her own baby daddy, once seen as a dependable figure in her life, but now reportedly cooperating with authorities. His willingness to provide information could prove to be the final blow that dismantles Tiffany's carefully constructed facade of power and influence. As the investigation gains momentum, more of Tiffany's secrets are being exposed, painting a damning picture of a leader who prioritized self-interest over the responsibilities of public service. The once loyal allies who helped her maintain control are now turning their backs, ensuring that law enforcement has everything they need to hold her accountable. The story of Tiffany Henyard serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of corruption and unchecked ambition, a reminder that even those who believe themselves untouchable can ultimately be brought down by the very people they once relied on. What began as a meteoric rise to power is now unraveling into a dramatic and humiliating downfall. With each new revelation, Tiffany's fate seems more sealed as she faces the consequences of her actions. One thing remains certain: the next chapter of this saga will be even more explosive. The full extent of her alleged crimes will soon come to light, and with federal authorities closing in, former allies testifying against her, and her once loyal inner circle collapsing, Tiffany Henyard's reign appears to be reaching its inevitable and dramatic end. Damage ensued when a leak exposed an issue in my kitchen, where the window leak extended into my daughter's room. Activist David Lowry, who contacted Dolton directly, raised concerns about the house being deemed livable on September 3rd, only for it to be deemed unfit for occupancy on October 15th. Lowry's theory, alongside trust issues during the investigation into Tiffany Henyard's alleged corruption, led more individuals to step forward to expose her actions. This development should have been anticipated, given the controversy surrounding her administration from the very start. Just 6 months after taking over as supervisor of Thornton Township, the FBI began delving deeper into her operations, recognizing the need for a complete understanding of her business dealings. Federal authorities formally requested all records related to her political fund, charity foundation, and township operations, signaling that her financial activities were under intense scrutiny even before the investigation escalated. Long before the federal probe took off, Tiffany had already faced mounting criticism within her ranks, particularly from members of her so-called Dream Team, a group she had personally selected to help her run the township. Tiffany likely assumed this would be a loyal and cooperative administration, but the reality proved to be far from harmonious. Trustees Tiana Beller and Jason House, along with village clerk Allison Key, were initially expected to be her closest allies. However, they quickly became some of her most vocal critics, refusing to overlook the unethical and questionable decisions she was making. What was supposed to be a united front in governance swiftly turned into a nightmare for Tiffany, as the Very people she had handpicked to support her began challenging her leadership and exposing her questionable actions. Tensions grew, and the trustees, who were originally chosen for their perceived loyalty, began working with the village board to take legal action against Tiffany, accusing her of serious conflicts of interest. Their main concern was the growing evidence that she was using her position not to serve the people of Dolton, but to further her own personal and financial interests. This legal battle, which erupted just 6 months into her tenure, exposed the deep fractures within her administration and solidified the growing opposition against her. Instead of taking responsibility for her actions or addressing the concerns raised by the trustees, Tiffany retaliated in a desperate attempt to regain control. She accused them of deliberately inciting controversy and working against her vision to make Dolton great, portraying herself as a victim of a political witch hunt rather than an official under investigation for serious misconduct. This response only deepened the rift between her and her former allies, making it clear that she was unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the federal investigation into her business dealings only intensified, further eroding any remaining credibility she had. The FBI scrutinized every aspect of her political fund and charity foundation, making it increasingly difficult for Tiffany to maintain the facade of legitimacy she had carefully constructed. The scrutiny extended to the township's finances, raising even more questions about how public funds were being managed under her leadership. What had begun as whispers of corruption soon turned into an undeniable storm of allegations, with more individuals stepping forward to expose the truth about her administration. The turning point came when those who had once been Tiffany's staunchest supporters began publicly distancing themselves from her. They recognized that the legal consequences of being associated with her could be severe. Tiffany, who had once projected an image of being untouchable, was now watching her empire unravel before her eyes. Every attempt to silence her critics seemed to backfire, reinforcing the perception that she was more concerned with self-preservation than with the well-being of the township she had been elected to serve. The lawsuit filed by the trustees further cemented the idea that Tiffany's administration was riddled with conflicts of interest. As the legal battles piled up, it became increasingly clear that Tiffany was running out of options. What had started as a seemingly unstoppable rise to power was turning into a slow but inevitable downfall, driven by her own actions and the unwillingness of those around her to continue enabling her. The deeper the investigation went, the more it became evident that Tiffany's leadership had been built on a foundation of corruption, manipulation, and self-serving. Tiffany Henyard's world is unraveling, and this time it's not just rumors or whispers behind closed doors. Explosive footage, allegedly leaked by her own team, has plunged her already embattled political career into even deeper turmoil. The video has fueled rumors that Henyard's closest allies are now turning against her, leaving her in a state of panic. Whether it's karma or a calculated attempt to dethrone her, one thing is clear. Her days of acting invincible are numbered. Once the self-proclaimed Queen of Dolton, Henyard's hold on power has now become a controversial spectacle, with scandals seemingly trailing her at every step. True to form, Henyard recently escalated the crisis with actions that seemed designed to invite criticism rather than de-escalate the tension. After a Board of Trustees meeting was canceled due to a lack of attendance, Henyard chose to push forward with critical decisions that blindsided the town. In the absence of the trustees, she brazenly appointed a new village administrator and attorney, appointments many saw as a maneuver to sidestep opposition and secure her dwindling power. This defiant, some would say reckless, approach to leadership raised eyebrows across the community as Henyard's once iron grip on Dolton seemed to weaken with each passing day. The fallout from these decisions came quickly. The Illinois Attorney General's office condemned Dolton for violating the Open Meetings Act, making it clear that Tiffany's actions were not just politically damaging, but legally questionable as well. Tiffany Henyard's once unshakable grip on power continues to weaken as a series of scandals, questionable decisions, and internal betrayals shake her leadership in Dolton. What was once a widely supported administration now faces mounting opposition, with Henyard's attempts to maintain control raising more concerns than inspiring confidence. The power struggle between Henyard and Keith Freeman, the village administrator, exemplifies the growing instability within her administration. Despite Henyard's efforts to sever their ties, Freeman has managed to remain in his role, effectively defying her attempts to dismiss him. Freeman's continued position in the administration suggests he may possess significant leverage, possibly even evidence of Henyard's alleged corruption, which has made him a powerful figure in the unfolding drama. In addition to this power struggle, several former employees have filed lawsuits against Henyard, accusing her of wrongful termination. These legal battles have only added to the growing turmoil surrounding her administration. Amid the increasing legal pressure, rumors have circulated that Freeman may be cooperating with federal investigators, which could unravel the full extent of Henyard's alleged misconduct. Henyard's recent attempt to dismiss Freeman sparked significant controversy, particularly when the Board of Trustees resisted her unilateral decision. Trustee Chris Gonzalez made it clear that any personnel changes required board approval, further highlighting Henyard's disregard for institutional norms and procedures. This standoff between Henyard and Freeman, coupled with the growing legal pressure, underscores the increasingly precarious nature of her leadership. The spectacle of Freeman's ongoing legal troubles, including bankruptcy fraud charges and allegations of retaliation against employees, has only further tarnished Henyard's image. While she has attempted to distance herself from Freeman's controversies, her efforts have done little to deflect attention from the legal and ethical challenges surrounding her administration. In addition, Henyard's extreme measures to bolster security at Village Hall, such as citing a sarcastic letter as justification, have only amplified perceptions of her growing paranoia and inability to connect with the community. Henyard's refusal to step back and reassess her leadership, despite mounting opposition, reflects a desperate attempt to cling to power. Her controversial moves, such as appointing new administrators and attorneys without board approval, have been widely criticized as efforts to consolidate control and replace those who might challenge her. These appointments, declared invalid by interim Mayor Jason House due to a lack of quorum, have only further undermined her position. Even as Henyard faces growing discontent, she has continued to double down on her defiant approach to governance, accusing critics of manufacturing drama and even suggesting that some critics are part of a larger conspiracy. However, the cracks in her leadership are becoming more evident. Attendance at public meetings has dwindled, and residents have grown increasingly frustrated with what they perceive as a focus on spectacle rather than substantive governance. Despite the mounting challenges, Henyard has remained defiant, even as her once loyal allies, including Freeman, become liabilities. The growing disarray within Dolton's administration has led many to question whether Henyard's leadership is irreparably damaged. Her behavior reflects the actions of a leader in freefall, clinging to power through increasingly dramatic and controversial decisions. These attempts to consolidate her authority, however, are overshadowed by the growing legal and public discontent that threatens to bring her reign to an abrupt end. With mounting lawsuits, federal investigations, and growing dissent within her ranks, Henyard's time in office seems to be rapidly coming to an end. Whether she can weather this storm or if her tenure will soon collapse remains uncertain. However, it's clear that her hold on power is slipping, and the walls are closing in. Despite Henyard's insistence that she is cleaning up the town, her administration's financial mismanagement and questionable spending habits have raised significant concerns. The $67,000 in travel expenses for herself and her entourage in just 5 months, which exceeds $100,000 when additional fees are considered, has drawn sharp criticism from the public. Henyard has attempted to deflect attention from the growing legal and financial issues by claiming that her actions have been misunderstood and that she is improving the town. However, this defense has not been well received. Legal battles, including the wrongful termination lawsuits filed by former employees, continue to mount. These lawsuits highlight the toxic environment within Henyard's administration as accusations of retaliation and corruption persist. Additionally, Henyard has been accused of favoring local businesses and engaging in unethical practices, such as using her position to target political opponents. One notable case involves a local barbershop owner who accused Henyard's administration of locking his business license for reasons that appeared politically motivated. In another instance, Dwayne Thrash, a former maintenance manager, revealed that Henyard's inner circle had tried to recruit him to participate in a shady plot to replace the school board's attorney with one of their own. When Thrash refused, he was fired, further raising suspicions about the administration's unethical practices. As the legal challenges mount, Henyard has increasingly relied on her inner circle and loyalists to shield her from the growing backlash. However, this strategy has begun to backfire, with former allies turning against her. Carmen Xo, a trustee on the Thoron Township Board, recently accused Henyard of unethical and predatory behavior, citing her manipulation of employees, vendors, and residents to consolidate power. Xo's public break from Henyard has only added fuel to the growing fire surrounding her administration. Henyard's leadership, once praised for its decisiveness, now appears to be crumbling under the weight of legal battles, corruption allegations, and public dissent. The rising tide of opposition, coupled with mounting legal pressure, has led many to speculate that Henyard's downfall is imminent. As residents and critics alike watch the spectacle unfold, it's becoming increasingly clear that Henyard's grip on power is slipping. Whether she can survive this latest wave of challenges, or if her troubled tenure will soon come to an end, remains to be seen. One thing is certain: the walls are closing in on Tiffany Henyard, and it may only be a matter of time before her tenure as mayor reaches its inevitable conclusion. This dramatic turn of events highlights the unraveling of Henyard's administration, and whether she can regain control or face her inevitable downfall will shape the future of Dolton and Thoron Township.